Napper here from Enduro Engineering. Today we're going to talk about replacing your fuel filter, not only in the tank and also in the inline filter as well. Part number 22451. So it comes in the kit, and we're going to break this down for you. It comes with a filter, the inline filter, and the clamps to do so. A lot of people will talk about, when should I change my filter or inline filter? And I should check the inline filter more often than not. You can always, hold it up to the light, see through it. You can clean it, but it's good to replace that on a periodically basis as well. And then also the tank filter. It really, depends on how you're filling the tank. If dirt's getting there, the guys running hair scrambles and stuff with that dry brake system. You can get dirt in there a lot easier. Myself, I do that every other race just to make sure that filter is good and get all the sediment out of the bottom of the tank. The guys with just a regular gas cap, they recommend 60 hours. Sometimes you might notice a bog in a bike and that's really a good indication it's time to change that tank filter as well. We're going to show you the tools that are needed and break it right down for you. In the fuel filter kit, what you're going to have is the tank filter, inline filter, and the two clamps to put your tank filter on. Also, tools you're going to need is a pick to pull the inline filter out. Then also on this particular bike, you're going to need a 15, a 17, and 19 millimeter open end wrench, 8 millimeter to pull the fuel pump out of the back of the tank, and then you're going to need some side cutters to cut the clamps, and then I like to use the bullnose cutters to put the clamps back on when assembling them back together. Now we're going to pull the tank off and go about that. Okay, we're already gone ahead and taken off the tank shrouds, and it's nice to do that because you can roll the tank around, and it is sometimes a little bit difficult to get that fuel pump to seat back in the proper place. And also, before we did this, we drained all the fuel out so we have a nice clean video booth here, and I don't stink up the place. And just when you're working with all the fuel, just make sure you're in a well ventilated area, and just don't get gas all over. It's just kind of a precautionary there. So anyways, now we're going to take the tank off. So you're going to remove your center tank bowl on this particular bike. Take off your electrical lead there on the fuel pump. And then we're going to show you how to take that fuel line off as well. So now we're going to disconnect the fuel line. Now we're going to pull out the inline fuel filter using your pick. There's that. It's good to inspect it too to see how much dirt or debris is trapped there. And then all you have to do to replace that, just slide that back in and make sure it seats against that like so. And now we'll go on to the tank filter. Alright, now we removed the tank from the bike. We're going to take out the fuel pump lead here. You need your 8 millimeter. Again, it's just 4 bolts. Now you're going to use your 17 millimeter wrench to take this. And there's an O-ring on this, so just make sure your O-ring's still good there. And also internally, we'll show you this, there's an O-ring there. It's a good time to inspect that too as you're replacing the filter in the tank. Okay, now we're going to need the 19 to hold the nut on this particular one, and then your 15 to break that loose. Spin that off there. Again, on this one, there's an O-ring on each side of this. Make sure that's seated correctly and not torn or anything like that, and you don't lose those when you're putting that off to the bench. Spin that off. Again, another O-ring. Again, just make sure you don't lose that or it falls off as you're working. And now you can pull out the pump. And as I stated earlier, we did drain all the fuel out so we would make a mess here in the studio and all that. Again, when you're doing this at home, make sure you're in a well ventilated area so you don't get those fumes in the house, garage, or whatever. So now we're going to take off the fuel filter. I use side cutters to remove the clamps. Sometimes these can be a little difficult to cut off, but I like to just kind of go in there. Cut that off like so. kind of put those off the side, remove your hoses. And another good thing to note, this fuel filter has an arrow on that. And just, make a note of this when you're replacing it, because the way this filters is the flow, and you want to make sure that arrow is pointing to the electrical lead on that part so the filter works correctly. So remove your filter. Get rid of your clamps. Now it's time to install your new filter. So slide the clamps over. Again, the arrow pointing towards the electrical lead. And just shove the hoses on until they bottom out against the filter. And then now you're going to take your bull nose and just crimp those like so, nice and tight. Okay, now you're ready to install the fuel pump back in the tank. As you probably noticed, if you've done this before, or if you're looking at your tank, we've upgraded to the aluminum one from the plastic fuel line connector coming out of the tank. This is a good upgrade to do when you're doing this. There's been some issues I've seen in the field that in a crash or if a stick comes up, it's been breaking the plastic connector. And then if that happens, you're pretty much done on the trail. So we'll show the part number here at the below. It's a good time to upgrade that. It's a Husqvarna KTM part. You can get it through the hard parts there. And now's a good time to upgrade that. So that's why it might be a little bit different in the extra tools that are needed in this particular segment. So again, great upgrade to do while you're doing this. All right, now we're going to install the fuel pump back into the tank. It's pretty straightforward. Slide it in. What I like to do personally, I'll just take a couple of these screws here and just kind of just thread them in a couple to hold that into place. And this is kind of the fun part. You want to kind of get that lined up, kind of shake it around a little bit. Sometimes it'll go great. I'll take a small Allen wrench or whatever and kind of just poke around at that a little bit. Help line it up. Again, sometimes you can just knock this right out and get it on the first time. Sometimes it might be a little bit more difficult. All right, now's a good time to kind of get that lined up. Again, make sure your O-rings are back on the hardware it needs to be. I always just kind of just thread it on there, a couple threads. And once you get those started, everything's lined up, then go ahead and tighten. Put your fuel connector back on. Again, make sure your O-rings are in the hardware as it's supposed to be. And tighten. And then go back and then go ahead and tighten down your electrical lead, and then you're going to be ready to install the tank. Don't forget your electrical lead. Okay, now go ahead and reconnect your fuel connector. And a good thing here is you want to hear an audible click when you go to snap that back together. You can hear that click, snap. Now you know you have a positive engagement for your fuel line lead. And here's another pro tech tip for you. What I like to do on our race bikes, you got these brake pins that we can get. And what I like to do is kind of a safety precaution, is you can kind of slide it in there, and then where that button is, you can put that in there, and that will help with any accidental disengagement of that lock on there. All right, now we have everything in the tank all connected back up to the fuel source. Everything's locked down. Now it's a good time to reinstall your plastic, put your seat in, build the bike up, and then go out and have some fun on your dirt bike. And thanks for watching this video from us here at Enduro Engineering. You guys have a great day.